do I think aliens are good or bad?
Yeah.
I don't think anything is good or bad. First of all, I think that things are either in service to themselves or they're in service to the collective, which also sometimes reflects within service to yourself. If the service to yourself is being executed, again, like I said earlier, in order to, somehow in some way assist the collective. So
Got it.
I think good and evil are definitely, in my cosmology, and this is an opinion, sure, but are human constructs. And again, like, a better way to view them is service to self or in service to the collective, right? And so, and I think that to put a blanket over extraterrestrials that may find themselves here, which I think is very clear and widely believed at this point that they've already found themselves here and are likely visiting us right now, are like probably going to be vastly different from one another, and each have their own intentions or agenda for being here. Sure, some of them might be, self-serving in some way, and others, certainly in my experience, seem to be trying to guide us and facilitate our evolution in some way or another. And it seems that these beings have been doing this for a very long time.
Greetings. Accessing archive. Authorizing. Access granted. Accessing file.
All right, we are rolling, and I'm here with my good friend Donnie, aka Savej. How's it going today, brother?
What up, dude? Feeling good. Been in the studio all day with a friend, Johnny Buffalo, an amazing beatboxer. And yeah, we're gonna sit down and have a chat. What's up?
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks for being here. You're one of my favorite artists, and I learned about you for the first time right around the time you released your first album, Solstice. And that's become one of my favorite albums of all time. And I'm hard to impress, you know what I mean? Like, I listen to Tool and Nine Inch Nails and like some master level shit, but you've jumped right up there with them. So I just got to say thank you, brother, for what you're doing for the music realms and for Gaia, and just your whole mission is so awesome, and I really resonate with it. So just thank you, brother.
Yeah, man, totally. Thank you for that. Tool. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say, one of the newest things from you is your live Envision set, and it freaking blew me out of the water. I tell this story, I've told a couple of people now, about how, I don't know how, but somehow you always hit me up at the most synchronistic times. And it's like, how did Donnie know I took medicine? I don't know. But anyway, you sent me like an early preview of the Envision set like a day before it released. And I was on some medicine and I sat with it, and it freaking blew my mind, dude. That stage was so sick. The music, so sick. The community, your performance, all of it was just like 10 out of 10. And I remember you saying one time when we were hanging out that you felt like you maybe had been holding this intention to manifest a set at Envision for quite a while. Like, it was something that you were really looking forward to happening, but it's almost as if you knew it would happen eventually. And what blew my mind so much about it was like, Envision kind of changes their stages. They have different themes and they look different ways in different years, but that was a Savej set. That was a Savej theme. That was a Savej stage. And I know a lot of other people played on it, but it was just so perfect for your vibe, man. Like, I just wanted to say, what's that about? Like, tell us the story about why you wanted to play at Envision. How did you feel like maybe you manifested it, or like, how did you magnetically drew that experience, and the world is so much better for it because it's such a freaking amazing set. So yeah, just take us down that path a little bit.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. And yeah, that was definitely a dream / visualization come through. And I've been holding that, closely for a while. I mean, Envision is, one of the top few festivals of which their ethos I'm just in total resonance with. The people behind it, the unreal caliber of love and production that goes into that festival. It's hard to believe while you're looking at it. It's crazy. And yeah, like the Luna stage, you know, was the stage that I've always wanted to play. You know, a nighttime Luna set. And when we got there, because, you know, Luna doesn't open until Wednesday, but I was able to like creep back there. They were actually still building the stage and see it. And it looked like a fucking mirage, dude. Like I was like, there's no way that's really what I'm looking at right now. And it was broad daylight. None of the lights or lasers or anything like that. None of the projection mapping. And I about hit my knees, dude. I was like, oh my God, that is wild. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been really holding that vision for a long time. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but, you know, obviously I'm a full body believer that when you really intend to manifest something, like manifestation is the sum of intention plus action, right? Like it's not just one thing that you just like, oh, I'm going to think about this and it's going to happen. And it's not just like, oh, well, I'm going to do it without thinking about it or being intentional about every move that I make towards a goal. It's the sum total of all of those things. And so intention plus action, right, is just kind of how I've been living my life, obviously. And so when you live and operate out of that ethos, unavoidably the universe conspires in your favor to give you the things that you're working toward, right? And or rather to put choices in front of you that allow you to decide kind of how the potentialities are going to flow for you. And so the way that I linked up with everybody that ended up making that happen for me was locked and loaded with synchronicities. I mean, crazy. And then, you know, super long story short, just to give like the elevator pitch, I was already in Costa Rica playing a different event, this opening of this retreat center and the launch of this fund, this visionary fund project. And David Starfire was going to play Selva Harmonia, which is owned and operated by one of the founders of Envision. And he saw that I was in town, so he hit me up. He's like, hey, you want to come play Selva tonight? So shout out David Starfire. He helped out on this one. And he was like, you know, you can meet the Envision crew. I was like, yeah, I'll be there. I'm already in town. So I'm like 10 minutes away. And I was already going to be there. So I went over there, went and played. One of the founders of Envision who was there, he was like blown away by the set that I played, and afterwards he was like just telling me, he was like, Jesus, like whatever. And I was like, I'm just saying, dude, Envision is a bucket list for me, straight up. And he's like, you passed the interview, I'll be in touch. And I was like, no way. Yeah, I was like, no way, dude. And then like a couple of months passed and I hadn't heard anything, and I was just like, you know, whatever. And then sure enough, their booking person hit me over, like, we want you like prime time on Luna stage. I was like, whoa, let's go.
Wow.
So yeah, that was really cool. And I mean, you know, I told people in the beginning of my set, obviously, I was like, bro, straight up, I've been visualizing this moment for years. Right. And look where we are. Like, yeah, you know, just like
exactly
let people know that, like, bro, like you can if you work with that intention and action combo constantly, like it's harder for you to not get the thing than it is for you to get the thing. And like, you know, you have to just make conscious decisions, and it's always work. And each step is another step towards the thing. It's not like it's just going to fall in your lap magically, but when you work out of that ethos, like the thing will come to you.
Absolutely. Well said. That's an awesome story. When you intend to manifest something, do you kind of do like a mental affirmation, almost like I'm going to play that? And you just like as a knowing?
All the time. Yeah. And I think and speak as if I already have the thing. I think that that's somehow like super important. Yeah. Super important to that. Like, but yes, I tell myself like, yes, this is going to happen. Not like I want this, or like, especially never I need this. It's like, this is going to happen. And then, you know, my intention generally for especially like something at Envision, or whether it's music related or whatever, is also generally to assist other people in some way, you know, to an equal or greater capacity that I'm assisting myself. Like, you know, I make music and create experiences with the intention of like really bridging a gap in people's psyche between the ancient and the future, and between cultures and the boundaries that we've placed around ourselves and our culture and our belief systems of what music is or can be, of what culture is or can be, of what psychedelics are or can be. And like, you know, people really, that's why Envision was so special to me, because I knew that the people there would be so receptive to picking up what I'm trying to put down. And they were, and it had a really big impact. It had a big impact bringing the Yawanawa out on stage.
Yeah, that was so magical.
Yeah.
I was like crying. I'm just being honest. I was like crying of the beauty.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of people said that, man. And like, it was cool because we didn't even know. We didn't even know. So it was super last minute. I already had a whole day studio session playing with them to record off site for a charity album that I'm making right now. But the Envision set pop up on Luna thing was super last minute, and like we didn't have a track, so I made like a quick like edit of a different track, and I got the back line. Shout out Martin, stage manager at Luna. Dude went way out of his way to like make sure we had all the backline we needed, all the mics, the monitors, everything. We're just like popping up for one song. We're like, we're gonna do it, dude, like whatever. And yeah, it went amazingly, obviously. And we brought them out, and like I was looking at people's faces, and I kind of got it a little bit, but I still didn't realize, because we were just like doing what we do and like just expressing the thing that this is like living our life. Like that's just straight up like expressing the vibe that we always express regardless.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how well it would be received by everybody. And so like when I got off the stage at the end of my set, people ran up to me, like the performance coordinator and a couple other people involved in the festival, and they were like, dude, like I can see it in your face that you have no idea how historic that was. And I was like, damn, really?
That felt like that.
Yeah, I was like, it's like that for real. And they were like, dude, yeah. I was like, damn.
It felt so celebratory of what has given us so much. You know, you didn't just do it for you, Donnie. You did it for us all. You know, like these ayahuasqueros are healing the planet. They deserve celebration, truly. Like, I love them, and I just love that we can celebrate them in that way. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, they do, and they also deserve some of the modern comforts that they don't have. That, you know, of course they live these lives, but so what we're trying to do with those two brothers in particular through an organization, a nonprofit called Futuro Nativo, is we're trying to raise $80,000 for them to get solar panels in their village, because they're running on a diesel generator, and obviously it's polluting their sacred land, and they hate it, and it doesn't even give them the power requirements that they need anyway. And so there's like, you know, a solar panel project that we're trying to fund. That's why I'm making the album as well. I recorded 6 of my favorite Yawanawa medicine songs, and we're putting together an album for charity to try to raise awareness and to raise money. You know, obviously music doesn't really make that kind of money, music sales these days. But, you know, just to raise awareness and to do what we can. And we're also in the very early stages of planning some shows with them in the US. So that'll be happening like fall, winter. And yeah, those dudes are awesome. We soul bonded just like fucking immediately. And you know, we did, and they were so hyped to go on Luna stage. Like, they were so hyped because they did some acoustic sets by the Sacred Fire at Envision, and it was a party, dude. It was so sick. I love the way that they do their acoustic stuff, because it starts like with either no or really slow guitar, and then it's the same song. They'll do a song, but it's really slow and like a prayer first. Yeah. And then your boy will just start hammering the guitar, and and just singing the same song way faster and hyper, and everyone just gets up and dances around the fire. It's such a vibe, dude. It's
absolutely. I haven't sat with that tribe, but I've sat with another one that they did do that as well with the guitar, where it's like, you know, slower, boom, let's go. And then the dancing and stuff. Yeah. That's super awesome, man.
It's a vibe because it brings you back into that sacred celebration. Like that sacred celebration is what I try to do with Savej sets, right? And so it's like with what they're doing with their acoustic sets, it's like you drop into that moment of prayer and gratitude and just like remembrance and just reverence. And then, but it's like those two things don't have to be separate, right? It's like you drop in for a quick 30-45 second prayer, and then it's just back to the celebration, and everyone's just like making trains and going around the fire and just, you know, all that. It's a vibe.
So beautiful. Yeah. I look forward to experiencing that with them. I'm sure I will at some point. But to get back to the manifestation topic really quick, I think there's something to be said about knowing what's in your path to manifest instead of just kind of like trying to manifest something that's really not for you. You know what I mean? You can sit around and say, I want to manifest a mansion. Is that really what you need in your path? Maybe that's not going to manifest because it's not what you need right now. It's not the dharmic path you're on. But can I manifest some experiences, some live experiences, some music, some art? Maybe that's in your path to manifest. What would you kind of say about, like, you know, you have to have like a good sense of what is for you and what isn't?
I mean, my input would be, you also have to have a sense of what's serving the collective as well. Because, I mean, that's the intentionality part. It's like, okay, you want to manifest a mansion. Who's that serving? Is that just like purely in service to yourself? You know, if it is, you might not have the universe conspiring quite as hard as if your intentions were to, you know, literally serve the collective in some kind of beneficial way, to provide remembrance or to assist into moving into this new age we're clearly collectively walking into, or, you know, whatever. I mean, I don't know, but, you know, yeah, as far as staying in like your zone of creative genius and maximizing that, I think there's a shitload of inherent value in like understanding your abilities and your like universe given gifts in order to, you know, express those things louder and louder and refine those things and just be a fountain of whatever creative input and output you have, like to really refine that, and then let that intentionality being birthing something that, you know, again, like assists the collective in some way or another. And sometimes self-serving is a means to doing that, at least for a little bit. You know, for instance, if you like need to, you know, birth a steady income in order to be able to do your thing, whatever that thing is or whatever. And in order to get to that steady income, you have to line this and this up. You know, like that's one thing. But, you know, saying like, oh, I want a mansion, that's a totally different situation.
Yeah, totally. And I wanted to say something too about manifestation, that it almost feels like it's a practice. And as you start realizing it's happening, it happens more, and it happens more quickly. And manifestations are happening at quicker rates. It almost feels like the first 1 to 5 times you do it, they can be kind of far apart and they can be kind of minimal. I didn't manifest much. I manifested a tiny thing, and then it was a long time, and then I manifested a tiny thing. But as you get like good at it, it's almost like you're making a song, and the BPM, you know, you got to put the kick on the right BPM. So it's not like smudged up in there and it's like, yo, that's off timing. It's almost like you're making a song with your life with each manifestation. And it's like, boom, 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 ka-boom, boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? Boom, boom. And like your life is becoming beautiful, like a song, you know? Would you agree with that?
I mean, yeah. And to your point, yeah, like I think collectively, a lot of us are starting to see, not only as a result of technology, but the Law of One talks a lot about this as well as numerous other philosophies. But collectively, I think we're starting to see the time period between our expression of something that we're trying to call in, and then that thing being birthed into our physical realities becoming shorter and shorter. That's also happening with technological advancements. Obviously, we're very rapidly approaching what Terence McKenna talked about as the singularity, which is the time frame between paradigm shifting innovation and technology becoming smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it's just like and, you know, with machine learning, we're going to see that come to fruition like really soon, and it's going to be super bizarre. But yeah, I mean, obviously occurrences in life seem to happen that same way. And to your point about synchronicities or manifestation or whatever happening,
and they're linked, you know, like synchronicities are like the middle points between manifestations.
Of Of course, I totally agree. And like to your point about them happening more and more, as you said, the better you get at it. I think like when you can really see and appreciate and take in and express gratitude for those types of God winks and those types of things coming into your life, like living in that state of presence and gratitude just calls more of it in. And like, I think that's the reason for that, right? And then your eyes are open to pay attention to whatever synchronicities are clearly trying to tell you something. I mean, your external reality is always a reflection of your internal reality, so that's unavoidable. And like when you can really believe that and pay attention to the things that happen to you and understand them as catalysts and understand like what it is that you need to be seeking or paying attention or what step you might need to take for this or that, you can kind of play the universe like a mystery game. It also keeps it from getting boring. Yeah. And for me, following that mystery game has led to everything that I am and do and has happened for me. So
100%. Yeah. And I see it, I know everyone that is a fan of you sees it happening, and we're also happy for you,
Thank you.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, okay, hold on, it's coming back. Yeah. Okay. I got it. So it's that if the universe does grant you a manifestation and you don't kind of bow to the universe and say, thank you, I see the manifestation and thank you. And that bring the gratitude in. It's almost like it will, it's not like it's actually saying this, but it's almost like, hey, you weren't grateful for that last one. So what makes you think I'm going to give you another one? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you want these manifestations, you want to bring these intentions into your life and create these things, do these things. Like, you have to be grateful for when they do happen and actually feel it in your heart. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for that experience. And then the universe says, he gets it. Let's keep giving him some more. Do you agree?
I mean, I think there's some really deep nuances to what you're talking about. Like we're using the term universe, right? But like that term is honestly synonymous with the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind. And like, in my opinion and in my studies, like that's the thing that's truly calling everything in, is that large portion of your mind that's underneath the tip of the iceberg that we don't tend to have conscious access to. And, it's a situation of positive reinforcement. Like, of course, that latent function of your mind is not going to continue calling things in that you're not expressing gratitude for or that aren't in alignment for you if you're trying to go down the wrong path and then you're just wanting the mansion or whatever.
Right.
Like, you're not going to, like, there has to be some type of systematic alignment in order for all the puzzle pieces to line up for your subconscious to start, like, truly affecting the field of probability and then bring those things into your conscious awareness one by one, right? Which is probabilities and decisions. And each of the decisions that are presented to you through these synchronicities also have to be followed. Like, the trail has to be followed to the thing, right? So like you're presented with conscious decisions that, generally reflect your intentionality. Like, well, if I go this way or if I go this way, and like, right. When you kind of solve the puzzle is when the thing's waiting for you at the end of the rainbow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a proactivity, a little bit of like a hustle too. You've got to kind of work. Because if these opportunities start aligning and the manifestation's trying to occur, but you get lazy and you drop the ball and you forgot to respond and, oh shit, I messed up. It's like, dude, the manifestation was there, but you had to plug it in. You had to take it to the wall socket and, and if you don't do that, it's unplugged and it's going away. I don't know. That's just a thought that came to my mind.
Of course.
You got to work, and that's the work of it. It's not just sitting around, I'm going to manifest this and it just pops into your room, like, we know that's not going to be it, but it's a deep topic, but I think we touched it pretty well. And I think that people will have like a decent understanding as to what we're trying to say when we say manifestation, because it's widely kind of like misunderstood, like people think of it as airy fairy. Like, you can't really do that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I know there's The Secret, and The Secret is very simple, and it's just like think about it and it'll come, and it's like, no, it's not quite that easy, but that does get you going down the right track, I think.
It's also a slippery slope that can lead to spiritual bypassing, though, like really quickly, and like avoiding doing the things and the real 3D actions that are required. I mean, I've certainly never thought something into being without doing anything about those thoughts. I mean, I don't know, maybe some people do that. That's great. But, I think a lot of the woo-woo kind of a connotation that's been associated with that word manifestation is feels woo-woo because a lot of time it's spoken about without the action part, like just the intention part, right? It's like, oh, I mean, like you said, like, oh, well, I'm just going to think about this thing and call it into my life. Well, I don't know, dude. I mean, good luck, but I wish you the best. But, certainly in my experience, I have to like really visualize the thing and then visualize the steps I need to take to get the thing and then do those steps,
100%.
And the universe totally seemingly magically supports the whole process. And when you're when it feels like it's too far away, or you'll be reminded, that it's not, through some of these synchronicities, and things will line up for you. But it's like it only seems to conspire if you're also putting in that action.
Right. 100%. Love that. Okay. Well, to move on to the next topic, you had recently done a San Pedro ceremony. That is one of the only medicines I have yet to use. I've used almost every other psychedelic medicine, and I have tried peyote in a very small amount. I'd say it was like 2 grams of peyote, which isn't a lot of peyote. But I did get an effect, and it was nice. So I've tried quote unquote mescaline. But for the listeners, I'd love to hear about your ceremony, how it went, any insights you brought back. But also, if you would just tell us what San Pedro is, and maybe what mescaline is, and how is it different than an ayahuasca or a psilocybin?
Yeah, I mean, so San Pedro or Huachuma, before the conquistadors took over, it was called Huachuma. It's been called Huachuma for thousands of years. They actually kind of Catholicized it and told them that they could continue their tradition if they Catholicized it. And so they named it San Pedro, which is obviously Saint Peter, who in the Christian mythos kind of holds the keys to heaven or whatever. And so, but, in terms of the cactus itself, I mean, mescaline is a phenethylamine. It's not a tryptamine, so it's chemically different. It does have affinity at the same receptors. It's somewhat similar, but mescaline is very much more of a masculine energy. Obviously, it's called the grandfather to ayahuasca, being the grandmother. Yeah. And so, I mean, there are many scales of experience with cactus. Like, you can go like full-blown visionary, fractal, geometric, all that jazz. Oftentimes, it's not the case. You kind of got to take a lot to get there. Oftentimes, in like what we do at these ceremonies that we do over in the swamp in Louisiana is like, kind of like moderate to medium dosing, and it's a much more of like a community kind of experience, and not necessarily like a lay down, close your eyes, go deep inward kind of experience. We're out in nature, communing with nature. My favorite shit on earth to do is to just be deep in the Huachuma and like float out on my back in the basin and just let the sun like beam on my skin while I'm floating in like cool water, and just like float and just be and like look at all. I love Louisiana, dude, and I love the swamp, and obviously, and it just, Huachuma is such a nature-connected medicine. It just like really, really taps you into something so primordial within the swamp, and that's why a lot of people who go down there and hang in these ceremonies with us, like a lot of them, we love bringing people who aren't from Louisiana down there. It's amazing to witness, because a lot of times people have these like preconceived notion of the swamp and stuff, and like, ooh, this or that, or got alligators, this or that. And I mean, at 100% of the time, everyone leaves just understand just how magical and mystical and sacred of a place that it is. And it has never been and will never be commercialized or commodified in any way, because it can't, because it's flooding all the time. So it's it can't. And the even the clay in the soil is so pure because it's never been farmed ever. It's loaded with humic acid and fulvic acid that's been stripped from all of our soils elsewhere. And so, but did you have any like
That's awesome.
Specific questions about the experience itself, or do you want me to just
Yeah, well, I mean, the visualizations, you're floating on the back. What's happening? Like, are you having internal visions? Are you having downloads? Is it just like I'm just looking at trees? Because they all have a different vibe. Like psychedelics, they all look a little different. I mean, do you get the breathing? Like on psilocybin? Like, I'm just curious how it's different because I haven't really sat with it.
I mean, again, there's a dose response curve, but like at the doses that I most enjoy, it's like if I wanted to go like balls deep in like internal visions and stuff, I would drink ayahuasca, right? Or take DMT or high doses of LSD or something. So like Huachuma for me is much more of a grounded experience. Like, yes, there are visuals. It's not really like the breathing. There's definitely tracers and the colors are crazy and everything just takes on a different look that's not really articulatable, obviously. But
I call it alien. It just looks like we're seeing the Earth for what it is from an alien perception. When I see the thing that you're saying, I can't articulate it. It's like, oh, this is a planet in space. Holy shit. Like, this is an alien planet. Do you relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking classic way of thinking on psychedelics because, it pulls you out of your default mode network, and our tolerance to the absurdity of this human experience is no different than tolerance to drugs, right? Like, we're just so used to it and are creatures of habit that whenever you get pulled out of that default operating system and you interrupt the top-down signal modulation in your brain and just your natural neurowiring, and your compartmentalized brain is suddenly on a conference call and all the networks are communicating with each other. Yeah, I mean, you definitely come into that realization like, yo, what the fuck? Fingers, I have opposable thumbs.
Right.
I can pick shit up. Like, awesome. Eating a fucking orange, I'll just stare at an orange and just really appreciate this orange. And so like the experiences that we do down there in Louisiana are like my two of my really dear friends built this crazy floating swamp maloka. It's one of a kind. It's in the absolute middle of nowhere in the Atchafalaya Basin, and it's like a 40-minute boat ride to get there from the nearest land. And so it's huge. It's turfed on the inside. It's amazing, and it's strapped to another houseboat that is a floating kitchen. And so, like, half of the experience is food, and that's another thing to answer your question about Huachuma. It's like there's nothing, no substance that makes fruit taste better than Huachuma, dude. I swear to God. So,
you can eat because on like psilocybin, I don't want to eat.
Towards the end of the day. I mean, yeah, like Huachuma lasts like, I don't know, depending on how much you take, and if you redose, like between 12 and 15 plus hours. So
damn,
it's a full day ordeal. Yeah. So, we go out there early in the morning, and that's when you drink it. And then, by like 5, where, you're salivating over this magnificent fruit tray that my dude makes, and just like
that's awesome.
Ridiculous, dude. Like jackfruit, watermelon, oranges, great, like everything you could imagine. And then like grilled pineapple
fruit ceremony.
You'll grill a pineapple for like 8 hours over coal on the back of the boat on a barbecue. Yeah. So,
damn.
Crazy. Yeah.
But when you drink it, is it like the same amount as ayahuasca? It's just a little cup, or is it like you got to drink a lot? Or
it's a little cup. I mean, that all depends on how it's cooked, dude. Like you boil it in more water than you reduce it to. So how much you drink is always a function of how much you reduce, how much water you boil off.
Got it.
So, if you put 10 feet of cactus in, let's just say like a quart, and you end up with a quart minus a little bit for what boiled off while you were cooking it. So now you have 10 feet of cactus. Generally speaking, 1 foot is like a dose. Depends on the cactus, but then so now you have 10 doses in a little less than a quart. And so you can boil that quart into a half a quart, a pint, and you can just you have the same 10 doses now in half the liquid. So it depends on how much you reduce it, but generally, you reduce it to where it's like about a cup of liquid. It's vile, dude. Like it does not taste good, and it hangs out on your taste buds for a little bit. But honestly, the medicine that we drank last weekend was the least vile of it. They cooked it a different way. And it was.
Is it worse than ayahuasca?
So all of the Huachuma I've drank ever prior to last weekend, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
What does it taste like? What'd you say?
Tastes like Huachuma, dude.
Because ayahuasca to me tastes like day old espresso with like molasses in it or some shit.
Yeah, ayahuasca's got like a licorice taste to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've drank like numerous types of ayahuasca too, and some were much worse than others, and some were not bad at all. Like Soltara's brew is like not bad at all. I could sip it on ice, honestly, and it's very effective.
What it makes me think, oh, that's awesome. What it makes me think it tastes like, if I just had to guess, is one time I ate like an unripe pineapple, and it, it's not sweet, and it was hard, and I just didn't know it was not ripe. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, this pineapple's not easy to eat. Oh, this tastes terrible. It's just like this weird, dry, fruity, sour. Is it sour or what would you say?
Ayahuasca or Huachuma?
Huachuma.
No, it's super bitter, and it like sticks to your tongue. It all depends how it's cooked and reduced, but yeah, I mean, it's super bitter, like really, really bitter. That's the best way.
Does it almost taste like peyote? I did try peyote.
You ate? Oh, did you eat it or did you?
It was actually in capsules, but I threw it up and I could taste it on the way out.
Oh, good.
And it was bad.
Yeah.
I still tripped. It was awesome, but
no, it's definitely, we don't drink these things for the taste of them. That's
right.
For sure.
Damn, that's awesome, man. I mean, I don't know a lot about San Pedro. I mean, I did work on a film about it, so I mean, I certainly know its lineage and stuff, but as far as like its effect, I just, that's cool to know more about it now. And I do feel called to it. Like some things I'm not called to. I've been not called to ayahuasca so many times, and then I was called to it, and then I did it, and I was not called to Huachuma so many times. I've been invited a couple of times, but now I am. So that's the thing about psychedelics, is like, you just got to listen to when it's the right time. Like sometimes it's offered. That doesn't mean you have to do it just because it's offered. It's just like, are you ready, or do you feel the call? So I like to echo that. I think a lot of people know that already, but I just like to echo that. Any last things before I move on to the next topic? No? Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you about ketamine and synchronicity. So my last episode was very heavy on ketamine. We talked about what happens during it. It's mind-blowing. It's cosmic. It feels like you can like connect dots in that ketamine state. You can see things more, a wider view of things. But also I feel like there seems to be some big tie-in with ketamine and synchronicity. I've worked with the medicine over the years, a couple dozen times, and it's almost on every single one, something clicks, something happens, something feels magical. I'm curious, have you had that experience, and if so, like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, countless times. And before I talk about ketamine on podcasts, I always like to preface this by just saying, like, I think that anybody working with ketamine or dissociatives in any capacity should and needs to read the book Ketamine, Dreams and Realities by Dr. Carl Jansen.
I have it.
It's an absolutely amazing book, and it goes through the pros, the cons, the largely unknown history of ketamine, what it is, how it works,
aliens,
and all of that, because obviously it's important to, it's a really miraculously mysterious substance, and it's important to go into it with as much understanding as possible of both the upside and the downside potentialities. So anyway,
I agree.
In terms of your question, yes, I've experienced that absolutely a countless amount of times. And it's really difficult to wrap our minds around what exactly is happening. But, my best theory is that we're absolutely, through the lens of the law of one, that we're absolutely, by detaching our awareness from our nervous systems which is how ketamine operates. It blocks a glutamate receptor called NMDA, and at a dose responsive, as a function of a dose response curve, it antagonizes, meaning it shuts off that receptor. And what that receptor is responsible for doing is mediating the flow of a neurotransmitter called glutamate within your nervous system. And glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. So that means that it allows for the proper electrical interaction between your neurons in both your brain and your spinal column. And so essentially, if you take enough ketamine, you are shutting down your nervous system like a computer, right? And obviously consciousness mysteriously does not shut down when you do so. Neither does your autonomic nervous system. Ketamine does not reduce respiratory rate and whatnot, the way that a lot more substances of its nature do. And so it's a really interesting substance. And they, so it's my personal theory that glutamate is what keeps our consciousness tethered to our nervous system. It's what keeps us within this experience of individuality, because our nervous system is powered on electrically, literally. Our electrical current is flowing in its full capacity throughout our brain and spine and nervous system. And so when you block that function, consciousness seems to most certainly become non-local to the body, and it absolutely reliably induces out-of-body experiences. And I'm not talking about like ketamine nasal sprays and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the whole experience. And it has to be done in the proper way, in the proper set and setting. The proper precautions need to be taken. The proper, proper everything. Proper music is absolutely the most important thing. And so because you become, through the lens of the law of one, you remember and become the logos, right? And so because when consciousness is not being funneled into a human vessel, it's all pervasive, right? It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And so in separating during this experience and still having some semblance of your own individuality somehow, which can sometimes be lost during those experiences, but during the process of reintegration back into your nervous system, a lot of times is when you do the deepest work, when you begin to regain your sense of individuality. And what seems to me to be occurring as a function of direct experience for, the last 10 or so years is like when you're in that state, like you seem to be able to, as a function of your thought processes, literally somehow affect the probability field or the quantum realm in some way that I'm not claiming to understand. I'm only claiming to have seen the fruit of it. But it's a very real and visceral experience, both while it's happening and then in the things that kind of follow you around after the case, right? And so, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's really all I can say there. But yeah, it's a very real phenomenon to be followed around. It's actually a reported side effect of dissociatives, not just ketamine, like an increase in synchronicity, or some institutions call it delusions of grandeur, because all of a sudden you're thinking like, oh, well, this or this or this, and they see synchronicity and recognizing them and giving them merit as like psychotic or schizophrenic symptom, right? And maybe sometimes it is when it's like to a degree that you probably shouldn't take it. But
I mean, if walking to the fridge to get a bottle of water is a big synchronicity for you, you might want to be worried about that a little bit,
No, totally, yeah. It's definitely a spectrum of experience and a spectrum of the merit that you give to any given experience, as being synchronistic or whatever. But it's a very, very real phenomenon. For instance, I'll give you one real life example that's really crazy because it happened to both me and Brooke. We were both at a point when I lived at my old house where we really were just starting to look into moving. And like I wanted to look for a house in a different place and everything. And we both had this crazy ketamine experience. Like, again, it's like a deep whole experience, eyes closed, sensory shut off, eye mask, everything, internal visualization, and but full blown 3D visuals, right? And I kept seeing towards the end, this was multiple experiences, not just one, on different days. I kept seeing this like tree line on the water, and I thought it was the Pearl River, like, which is the river where it already was all the time and stuff. I was seeing this tree line and like water, like a river or a lake or canal or whatever right there.
Yep.
And then I would like spin around in the experience and I would see this like kind of back porch area with this specific metal shelf with plants on it. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I told Brooke that, and she was tripping, and she was like, no way, like, me too, da-da-da.
Wow.
And like maybe a year after that, I had moved, I bought this house, I had moved, and I was standing in my backyard, in my back patio, and I had already obviously been in my own backyard a gazillion times, and I looked at the water and I looked at the tree line across the water, because I live on a canal that leads to a lake, but I live on a slough off of the main lake. It's probably like a 30-foot wide canal and a tree line. And I looked at it and I spun around and I looked at my back porch, and I'll be damned if I didn't have the same ass looking metal rack full of plants on my back porch. And I was like, what the fuck? I got crazy goosebumps and just was like, holy shit, super wild, dude.
Yeah.
And so like that was one of those things, and it's definitely unexplainable, like the exact mechanics of being outside of space-time in such a way that like I was clearly viewing some semblance of my future timeline in some way or another, while I was also trying to call that timeline in because I wanted to move so badly, and I wanted a property like I have now so badly.
Yeah.
And so super weird though, dude. But yeah, I think
10,000%. That's exactly the type of thing I'm trying to say. I've seen that. And I've talked about this on endless podcast episodes about how do we see our future? It doesn't make any sense. Does that mean the future is written? Can we diverge from it? Does it have to be that way? So many times I've seen the same thing. I see a thing in a vision, and then later on, I won't even be on any medicine. It'll just be like, holy shit, this is the thing from the vision, And
I mean, time is definitely non-linear. Obviously, that's another thing that psychedelics tend to show people, but it's more like a giant, infinitely intricate web of cause and effect. And so if our brains are natural predictive simulators, then it also somewhat makes sense that like you would be able to predict a specific web of cause and effect based on your own dispositions, and like certainly see something as a potential that could happen if you made such and such decisions along the path. But then there's also certainly an element of the visualization aspect of it that's just entirely defies logic and just makes me default to the fact that space and time don't really exist. According to the law of one, obviously, that's a third density concept. And so, if we exist in these multiple densities at the same time, then, all things essentially are possible when you understand this third density illusion as a mind matrix that we're literally dreaming into being through the use of light, right? And so it's like, I don't know, man, but while we're embedded in the human condition, I think it's probably best that we don't know this type of shit.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah. One thing coming to me is I heard this conspiracy theory, and it's just a theory, but I thought it was entertaining, that aliens might have brought ketamine to help us understand some deep shit. Like, ketamine kind of it's very young, like I think it was synthesized in like the 60s or 70s or Vietnam or something like that. Not too long ago, less than 100 years. But it just kind of popped out of nowhere. I almost wonder, is there a cover up, and is it an alien technology? I don't know. It feels like it. I mean, I'm sure you've heard. I mean, I watched the Hamilton documentary about ketamine. I love it. This guy knows people who go on alien ships and get probed and meet aliens. I mean, it has got a very alien vibe to ketamine. Would you agree, or is that plausible, or just way too out there?
I don't know, man. I mean, I wouldn't be really surprised, honestly, but I can't say that I have any evidentiary basis to believe that. But like, the book talks a lot about how the book Ketamine Dreams and Realities talks about like how it came into being. And, I understand, surely I'm definitely of the opinion that sources from outside of our planet have gifted us with technologies along the way here. And, some certain drugs may very well be viewed as those technologies or biotechnologies and may have been gifted to us in a similar way. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. To your point, it is a very alien experience, and I have had experiences with like extra dimensional beings using ketamine, no different than DMT or ayahuasca. But most of the time, in my experiences, it's not. It's much more of an inward, like psychedelics or could be viewed as just like infinitely intricate attention to detail, and your attention and awareness are on the creation, like the physical world and everything, whereas dissociatives and ketamine are like sensory shut off as opposed to sensory overload. It's sensory shut off and deprivation and internal void awareness. That's generally how my experiences are. While they can be very visual, the visuals tend to be thought forms that I'm generating, like literally from my thoughts. I call it Sandman sand because it's like it's made out of the visuals I see are made out of these kind of like particles that my mind is like generating. It's crazy, and it's like builds it out of sand and stuff like that. But
that's awesome.
But yeah.
Just on a quick side note, I was curious. You said the music is very important. What type of music? I mean, you don't have to necessarily give me a song name or artist, but just like what type of music is good for ketamine other than Savej?
Dude, I will. Yeah, it is. I wouldn't recommend most of my music for ketamine. It is, people do it, but that's not my jam. Like, you need a very specific vibe. And again, I'm talking about full doses that cause the full K-hole experience, not like, using it at a festival or whatever to dance or, whatever. This is a totally different thing. It may as well be viewed as a different drug, but like, you need music that's largely non-rhythmic and full of pads and ambient sounds that connect you, that make you feel connected. And I absolutely will plug my friends Liquid Bloom and Parangi from the Kuya sessions, the Kuya Cura sessions. The full Cura journey mix is something they brought me along for the ride while they were making it, and I was guinea pigging it for them, and it was absolutely a game changer. And I was like, dudes, do y'all even know what you just did? So so you can listen to the Kuya Cura full journey mix on Spotify now, on YouTube, anywhere, and I absolutely recommend that beyond anything else for a deep ketamine experience. They nailed it.
Amen. Yeah. I don't even know why that didn't come to my mind when I asked the question, but as soon as you said it, I was like, yes, spot on. Because same thing, I've had a handful of journeys with I think there's 3 of them now, probably at least one journey with each. And they're all magical in their own way, but definitely atmospheric and ambient, shamanic, like healing, right? Definitely. I agree with that. This is kind of funny question. So you said you had some experiences with extraterrestrials, whether on DMT or on ketamine. I was just having a talk the other night in the patio with my friend about this. We get this intuition that soon the aliens are going to reveal themselves. I'm probably not the only person saying that. People feel like it's coming. It's like in the next year, 2 years, they're going to show themselves. Do you think they're good? Do you think they're bad? Do you think they're smart? Are they just violent?
Okay.
Because I get the sense that they're maybe going to be peaceful, tactical, strategic, not like let's go blow their shit up. But yeah, do you think they're good or bad? What do you think?
I need you to rephrase the question. Do I think aliens are good or bad?
Yeah.
I don't think anything is good or bad. First of all, I think that things are either in service to themselves or they're in service to the collective, which also sometimes reflects within service to yourself. If the service to yourself is being executed, again, like I said earlier, in order to, somehow in some way assist the collective. So
got it.
I think good and evil are definitely, in my cosmology, are, and this is an opinion, sure, but are human constructs. And again, like a better way to view them is service to self or in service to the collective, right? And so, and I think that to put a blanket over extraterrestrials that may find themselves here, which I think is very clear and widely believed at this point that they've already found themselves here and are likely visiting us right now, are like probably going to be vastly different from one another, and each have their own intentions or agenda for being here. Sure, some of them might be, you know, self-serving in some way, and others, certainly in my experience, seem to be trying to guide us and facilitate our evolution in some way or another. And it seems that these beings have been doing this for a very long time. For anybody who's unfamiliar with this concept, you should start by reading Graham Hancock's book, Supernatural: Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind. It will change your life, especially if you don't believe stuff like this. But yeah, I mean, in my personal experiences, I've had, as we've spoken about on other episodes of your podcast, and I'll be diving in on my podcast eventually when I feel more comfortable talking about the full stories. But I've had encounters with numerous beings very many times now who most certainly seem to be guiding our evolution. And it seems to be what they do is this particular race or species, whatever you want to call it, seems to be facilitating the evolution of various planetary species at different places in the galaxy, apparently. And I mean, I'm talking about some real Guardians of the Galaxy type shit, dude. And it's crazy to think about, because the majority of us are still existing within a paradigm of thinking that we're alone in the universe, which is fucking absurd to me. But you know, whatever. And you know, I think disclosure, everybody's waiting for disclosure. Disclosure is happening. No one's gonna, Joe Biden's not gonna get on the podium and just tell everyone, hey, there's aliens. Like, they're gonna do it in a very strategic way so as to not cause chaos. And that's the smart thing to do. It's just the reality of the situation. Most of us are still indoctrinated into certain religions that totally forbid thinking of that nature, and different cultural programs that you know, aren't gonna mesh whenever you know, whether it's the problem or the solution exists outside of our world, that is going to shatter paradigms. So, but anyway, backtracking to your first question. No, I don't think any of them are good or bad. I think they have an intention. And whether that intention is to serve themselves and potentially put us in harm's way, sure, that's possible. I think it's more likely that there's, you know, some form of empathy or compassion or something in the situation. But I think that the ultimate reality is that there's going to be both, and that there is both, and that there has been both for thousands of years, and that they've been working behind the scenes. And that I think that, honestly, but as I hate to say this, I think that anyone who fully disregards that as total impossible nonsense is simply not well read enough, or hasn't taken enough psychedelics. As much as I hate saying that, drink enough ayahuasca or smoke enough DMT, you absolutely will have an encounter with an extra dimensional intelligence. And this is now being studied. Thankfully, I had Andrew Gallimore on my podcast, and we were discussing DMTX, the extended state DMT program that's operating in 2 different places. You know, they're putting people on an IV titrated drip of DMT, which very reliably induces these encounters. And the purpose for the program is to examine these beings, examine the encounters of these beings, right? And it varies from something that feels more like hyperdimensional in nature to straight up being on a fucking Star Trek style spaceship, which is what has happened to me and other people that I know, and interacting very, very distinctly, like having a conversation with an entity that is very alien and like most certainly not of this earth. And you know, I've learned things that I've brought back information that I could not have possibly known. For instance, one of the first encounters I had, I think I talked about this on the last time I came on your podcast, but I was literally shown the mechanics of how solar flares work. Super random and wild. I hadn't been researching or thinking about solar flares, and that's what they wanted to show me. The reason for that became apparent 8 years later, but it was like, which is something I'll be talking about on my podcast. But awesome. Like, it's Yeah, it's just super wild, dude. And it's a phenomenon that should be front page news, obviously, but for other very obvious reasons, it can't be, and that's just how it is, you know. And we have to deal with that. But we're in an age now where it also can't be suppressed, thanks to the internet and thanks to community-driven platforms and whatnot. Like, there's only a certain level of censorship that can happen, and it can only happen at the mainstream level. But that also creates problems and conspiracy groups and people seeking platforms and making shit up, or what's worse than making shit up is lining shit with semblances of truth, starting with truth and then embellishing the fuck out of it, which a lot of these like social media people tend to do with their I won't obviously I don't have the desire to call anybody out, but like there are some people with massive platforms that are most certainly just really milking it and like charging people for access to their this or that and telling them the information is coming from this or that. And I'm not here to judge any of that, but I'm not sure that's the right way to ease the population into the true gnosis that like we're not alone and that these beings have been assisting us for millennia. And so, but yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I can say on that. But
it makes sense that
it's happening.
Right. It makes sense that they would be behind like the pyramids of Giza to me. I mean, no one knows how they were made. It seems impossible. So it seems like aliens or alien technology, or maybe just lost Earth technology. I don't know, but it makes sense to me that like a UFO just floated it all together real quick or something, you know.
And that might be the case. And I mean, the mathematical precision of the pyramid, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, is communicatory. It's not the numbers that went into its architecture are also communicatory of knowledge that even if they were built by man, shouldn't have been known, probably couldn't have been known. For instance, if you take the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid at Giza and you measure it in any unit of measurement and you multiply that unit of measurement by 43,200, which is a very special number to me, and is the basis of all of my personal synchronicities and the reason I tune my music to 432 hertz and da-da-da. If you measure the perimeter of the base pyramid, any unit of measurement, multiply it by 43,200, you get the equatorial perimeter of the Earth. If you measure the Great Pyramid from where the top of the capstone would have been down to the base, and you multiply that by 43,200, any unit of measurement, you get the radial diameter of the Earth, meaning from the North Pole to the core of the planet. How the fuck would you know that? It's obviously not an accident. The Great Pyramid at Giza is a mathematical resonant relationship to the actual volume of the planet, the size of the planet and its proportions. And that is just like absolutely mind-boggling. And you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, let alone just like the feat of the building, the magic and the details too definitely speaks volumes. Some people think there's an upside down pyramid beneath it too. Have you ever heard about that? It's like
No.
And it was actually just an artistic depiction, and it's probably just fantasy, but it's a cool idea. And it showed like this ship taking off. It was the pyramid finally lifting off. Going, I thought it was
we probably know if there was an upside down pyramid right there, but
yeah,
I will say that Egyptologists do seem to, and I can't even knock them, dude. They do seem to hide a lot of stuff from other areas of academia and other cultures. Academics, they do seem to definitely be suppressing and acting like they don't know some stuff that they do know.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that was just art, guys. Like I don't actually know or think there's an underground pyramid as well, but it was fascinating art. That's super cool. On the topic of aliens, I explored this on one of my last couple episodes. Have you ever seen the movie Interstellar?
I have.
So at the end, spoiler alert, you know, you kind of see that the aliens that were guiding man was man from the future. It was the dude that went into the black hole in the Tesseract helping guide it all happen. It makes me think is it possible aliens are the advanced humans, us in the future, so highly advanced that we can come back to guide us? Because as we said earlier, time and space, not linear. Futures seem to exist if we're getting visions of them and then seeing them later. Like, what do you think about that idea?
I don't know. I mean, it's something I've thought about before. It's definitely a theory that exists in the zeitgeist, but like, I don't know. That shit's above my pay grade, dude. Talking about humans and future timelines coming back and all that jazz. And I mean, that movie to me feels like a deep ketamine experience, like straight up. Exactly. And that's what I said when I first saw it. I was like, wow. And,
Same.
You know, yeah, the logistics and mechanics of all of that are like so beyond human comprehension at our current level of awareness. Like, because there's so many like grandfather paradoxes and stuff that kick in when you start fucking with prior timelines. It's like, how does that unfold?
Butterfly effect shit.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I don't know either.
I tend to subscribe to the law of one's notion of the higher self, which would be a sixth density kind of oversoul situation. And yeah, I mean, I think that systems of consciousness take on their own consciousness as the systems become integrated, and integrated information, like kind of like integrated information theory, where as information systems become integrated, each system takes on its own conscious awareness. And I think this can be seen. I was talking actually in the Maloka last weekend during our ceremony, because you know we do this meditation at night in the swamp once the bugs turn on, and it's unbelievably loud and envelops your entire being. And we drop in and no one can talk for like an hour, and we do this meditation, and you just become this sound that you're hearing, and it's a symphony. It's an orchestra of a gazillion different bugs all emitting. We tend to think of sound as like a two-dimensional thing because that's the way that we visualize it, as waves. But in reality, each bug is emitting this information in a three-dimensional sphere of energy expulsion around it. And then each of their acoustic emissions are interacting and creating a wave interference pattern with all of the other emissions from all of the other bugs. And within that wave interference pattern, a system is created of interaction. And so when you really drop in and you listen, you can actually have a perspective shift, which is, instead of this like kind of stale cicada, cricket, bullfrog kind of sound, it actually becomes, your awareness starts sweeping the frequency spectrum, and it becomes this crazy vowel sound. And instead of being just like a bzzz, it starts going like, ow, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
And to me, that tapping into that overarching symphony of information as one thing is what we would term to be like the spirit of the swamp, right? Because the spirit of the swamp is everything that encompasses all of the life in this area. And so my point in saying that is that's what I mean by like an integrated information system, is like that symphony of all of these interacting informations takes on an awareness of its own within this theory, right? And so like that would be the mechanism for like the oversoul or the higher self, would be that as a collective, like that system of collective consciousness is actually also its own autonomous conscious entity. And so sure, because according to the law of one, it exists in sixth density, which is the step right before merger, right? Is like a unified consciousness, almost like a hive mind situation. Like, and it exists outside of space-time because by virtue of being sixth density, like surely it's putting pieces into play, and might very well be the manifestation of the human collective unconscious, and might very well be the thing that's intelligently organizing all of these synchronicities that we're talking about. And
love that.
So I guess relative to Interstellar, the way that I would naturally view a phenomenon like that happening isn't one person being able to control things of that nature, or people from the future. I think what's more likely is a situation like that, where it's a higher dimension of intelligence that is basically the sum of its parts operating as one intelligence.
You think we all have our own tesseract, or there's like a one tesseract for humanity? You know,
What do you mean tesseract?
so the tesseract's what he ends up in after he goes to the black hole, and he can like manipulate events on Earth. I'm thinking of that as the sixth density self trying to get us to, my thought is we all have our own one, and not one orchestrating us all.
Yeah, at a certain level, essentially. So what Ra terms basically like beginning of sixth density, it would still be separated, and we would essentially have each of our own unique higher selves, for lack of a better term. Again, this is just language, but that is essentially defined as like the portion of your beingness that exists at the end of your journey, of all of your incarnations, of all of your experience. It's basically the portion that exists outside of space-time, and for which everything has already happened, as difficult as that is to wrap our minds around. And then moving up into the upper levels of sixth density, because remember, all of these densities have sub-densities too. Each one has 7 sub-densities, has 7 sub-densities on forever. Okay. And moving into the upper echelon of sixth density, those things become one, and it is like a collective consciousness.
Damn. So dope. Wow. Love that visualization. I need to pair like the Interstellar visuals with the clip of that. So dope. Well, dude, we hit some amazing topics. The only one left I have is talking about your new music, your new album. You know, what can you share? What are you working on? And what's the intention and the vibes coming forth for the new Savej album? I'm so stoked.
It's going to be dope, dude. I'm not going to say the name of it yet, but I am going to... I can say that, like, for this one, I pulled from numerous cultures, and each track has its own distinct cultural vibe that I used either vocals or instrumentation or some chants or any kind of ikaro, whatever, from a specific culture. Obviously, I kind of do the signature, like, kind of melting pot thing, but it also, for this project, really focuses on each individual one having its own kind of cultural context, and I used cultures that each have a deep shamanic or deeply rooted spiritual tradition that seems to point at some kind of common origin in far prehistory, right? Nice. So it's like, but each track has its own kind of distinct cultural vibe for this one, and yeah, I'm stoked on it. A couple of the tracks I played in my Envision set, but yeah, a lot of them I didn't. And, still wrapping it up. We're looking at a fall release, and I'm not going to say when just yet, but yeah. And actually, I will have a single releasing from it in July. So check that out. Yeah, that's going to be super dope, and I'm stoked to get it out there.
Dang, super stoked on that. If there's anything I can do to help, any premieres or sharing, keep me posted. Can't wait. I wanted to say this before I forgot, which is how you were talking about those aliens, the bugs, making the wow and the orbs of sound. I started thinking about throat singing, and I learned about it through you, and I've been practicing for years. Ever since you taught me like the initial, how to get the motor going. And in visionary states that I've been in medicine states, like I feel like I can see that happening. Some type of auric charge when I'm throat singing. It's just like sending like pulses out. You've seen the frog sitting in the water doing his little humming, and the cymatics. Imagine it's the air, though. Like, what would you say about that before we close the conversation down?
That's exactly what's happening. Okay. I mean, that's what happens when we keep any tone at a certain frequency, or any given frequency. I don't mean a specific one. It's like when you're resonating a tone like that, you're creating that bubble of that resonance around you in 3 dimensions, right? Yeah. I mean, it's no different than that frog at all. What's his name, man? Why can't I think? There is a Samuel Ferrand, a visionary artist. He has this piece called, I think it's just called Icaro. And it's this it's this really psychedelic visionary art piece of like a curandero like singing an Icaro, and within the air you see the Icaro as those Shipibo patterns in 3D. It's like a 3D projection of those Shipibo Icaro patterns, and it's like that's how I envision and how I see Icaros being sung in ayahuasca ceremony. Like you can sensorially experience sound in a totally different way. Again, like our brain at baseline neurochemistry operates in a very compartmentalized manner. So it's like, you know, synesthesia is not, it's not necessarily what you want in your average everyday waking life at baseline, right? And so, but when you experience it, you can start to see the amalgamation of what our sensory input is really built and separated from. And it's really just this, like, just sea of frequencies of different types of waves. You know, obviously sound and light waves are different. Light waves are called transverse electromagnetic waves, and sound waves are called longitudinal acoustic waves. And, you know, they're based on different things, but ultimately it's still information being communicated through some medium, right? So,
but would throat singing make a different visual than like a ha?
I would imagine. I love throat singing when I'm on I'm on a visual psychedelic. It definitely alters my internal visions, like for sure. Absolutely. Not in the same way every time, but it causes shit to happen, like for sure. Yeah.
1000%.
And you just feel it in your body, dude. I mean, throat singing is so special because it really stimulates your vagus nerve, and it like really causes your chest cavity to resonate in a way that doesn't when you speak. So for me, it just feels good too. Like you don't just, you're not just emitting the vibration into the air, but you're emitting it through your own system as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Actually, I just remembered the first time my throat sang, I was on a mushroom ceremony. And it just came to me. I was just trying to make a low note. And then I slipped into it. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And I could do it again. But the next day I couldn't do it. And I could never do it again. I could only do it on the mushrooms until you taught me how to do them, start it up. You know what I mean? So it was like a mushroom taught me, but then you told me how to do it off the mushroom.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time today, Donnie. How can we invite people, you know, to follow you, listen to your podcast, and listen to your music and all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just Savej, Savej, on all platforms. You know, whatever, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, all the jazz. And yeah, my podcast is called The Ancient Futurist. You can find it through my Spotify as well, down in my featured playlist. And yeah, but it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, video on Spotify, audio on Apple Podcasts. And yeah, I have some interesting guests and some interesting conversations. We talk about a lot of the same stuff that you and I talked about today. But yeah, it's a vibe.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, thanks again for being here, and thank all of you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, man. All right, we'll chat soon.
Chat soon, brother.